Well, welcome to my channel, Mispronounced Adventures. My name's Alex. On this channel, I spend a lot of my time being cold.
And I'm a bit cold and exhausted.
For the last 3 winters, I've gone up to the Arctic. Where keeping warm is important, and because of that, I bang on about diesel heaters a lot.
Diesel heater for the heat. I said heater's heater. Leave the heating on. I did turn the heating on in the van about an hour ago.
And in the past, I've looked at a lot of diesel heaters. Chinese diesel heaters, a sealed unit, auto-term diesel heaters, then this. Air heaters. This may look like a normal diesel. Hydronical water heaters.
It is going to serve.
But I've never looked at all-in-one or portable diesel heaters because I don't like them. Quite often if you look up all-in-one or portable diesel heater, you see this variety, and I don't like them. They get installed in vans when they shouldn't be because they're not safe to do so. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with all-in-one diesel heaters when used in the correct context, such as piping hot air into a tent, a rooftop, a camper van, or a domestic dwelling. However, mounting them internally is not. And that's usually because people don't know the potential risks or why, and they've just seen some other photos online, or the marketing photos often for them show them being used inside, which they shouldn't be. As the exhaust and intake connections are internal, so if they leak, they can leak CO, which is not good for your health. If you have one of those and have installed it incorrect in a vehicle, but you didn't know about it, that's not a problem. They can be disassembled by a turret mount and mount one properly, cheap to fix and make it a lot safer. So if I don't like portable diesel heaters, why am I looking at one? Because there's a different style one that I've found. So I'm working with banggoods.com and looking at the Hcalory Toolbox Diesel heater. I like this style of diesel heater because it can't be installed accidentally inside because it's just the wrong form factor. Just because I'm reviewing the Hcalory heater doesn't mean they're going to get let off for poor marketing photos. And this great example showing which would probably be your last sleep if you ran this diesel heater inside, venting all the exhaust gases. I've got 2 of these heaters. I did take one of them with me to the Arctic last year because it's a convenient form factor to be portable. It can be used in a number of cases where I chucked it under the van to help heat up an engine preheater until the diesel froze in -38. And the other reason is because it's just got a normal diesel heater inside, and I always recommend taking a spare heater with you. You could just disassemble the portable unit and take the heater out to replace the entirety of your permanently installed one or just a single component. So I'm going to show you what's inside the Hcalory Toolbox Diesel heater, take it apart, see how it will work, and do some testing on it as well. So let's get on with it.
So this is the Hcalory Toolbox heater. Where do I open it? Diesel tank with vent hole, so it's not going to collapse on itself. Well, it's well packaged. There we go. Toolbox design. I mean, it's thick, definitely a bit squishy, but you know, for the price of this, which is a diesel heater all in one and its own specifically formed box, opposed to just adapting another box, it feels good for the price you're paying. Hcalory in the past, they're one of the better made, or at least one of the better marketed Chinese diesel heaters. So outside we've got hot air out for heating, got the exhaust. It looks like you might be able to run the exhaust just like that as well. Intake for air, controller, remote control, combustion air in, fuel in, and power supply. And this one I believe is the 12-volt model. On the back shows the configuration. This is a 5-litre tank this has come with, so the fuel tank can mount on the back, being a bit of an all-in-one unit. It also has examples of where potentially other fuel tanks could fit as well, so a few different mounting holes. A few different mounting holes with threads already in them actually, which is quite a nice feature, opposed to just into raw plastic. On the bottom, hardware mounted there. So the proof it comes with stuff. Let's get it opened up and have a look. All the stuff's inside. So what's in the box? Manual, a variety of different languages. Also showing there is a app as well for the phone, so we'll try that out later on. If you're looking at it, the phone app, from the pictures at least, it's quite interesting. The usual 75mm ducting, exhaust pipe, combustion intake that goes on the front, power lead with 20 amp fused cable and some connectors, filter for combustion air in, the gridded green hose. So green hose historically not being the best option because it can degrade, it cracks and it leaks diesel. The reason a lot of these kits use it is because it's less pieces you need than using the white hardline or the blue hardline with the connectors. This just pushes over nipples and then it just uses a clamp down. So not necessarily the best long-term option. Vent cover, so you can redirect it a little bit if wanted. Usual assortment of gubbins. So we got bolts, fuel line clips, jubilees, big jubilees for ducting. These look like the brackets you mount on the side of the case to put the exhaust on, or the air intake, muffler, and that's all the parts it comes with. Let's actually have a look at the unit itself. Right, well, configuration, it looks quite good actually. Plastic case, metal mount, which is mounted in the actual diesel heater itself. Brackets and ducting mounted directly to the outside of the case. Fuel pump, although the fuel pump generally should be mounted at like a 30-degree angle, so air bubbles made from the dosing, or the cavitations made from the dosing pump, don't get caught in the pump itself and stop it working. So stuck upright, that might not come out, or flat. Combustion air intake mounted and secured. Exhaust mounted and heat shielded as well, which is nice. It is nice to see when there is some thought. So this connector, being the exhaust, would get hot, but isn't directly connected to this metal, which is the mount. Actually goes further back, clamps onto the insulated section, and then has actually quite a few gaps and then small brackets mounting this securely to the plastic. So it's actually been thought to make sure you don't get heat from a few hundred degrees exhaust transferring to the metal brackets and then melting the plastic. DC power coming in. I think there is an AC version of this, but this is the 12-volt DC one. Coming in on the outside of there, same for the fuel. And it looks like the actual diesel heater itself is mounted to the bottom of the unit via metal and to the back of the wall as well. Inline fuel filter and the electrical connector leading to the controller on the outside. So I think if you're running it, you would have it sitting upright. Case itself is not waterproof, it's got venting holes. So if you were to leave this outside in the rain, it would get wet internally. Shouldn't be too much of an issue getting wet, because most of these are under vehicles normally anyway, and they get wet. But initially, it looks quite good. I think first thing I want to do is get the Hcalory diesel heater out of here and take it apart, compare it to some of my other ones, and see if there's anything interesting and different they do on their models than some of the others. If you're not familiar with Chinese diesel heaters, there is a massive variety of quality and components which could be in them. There's different casting qualities and casts themselves to the main body components, different ECUs, balanced fans, unbalanced fans, and a lot of options. So let's get the diesel heater out of here. It's got your normal 4 mounting bolts, as any other diesel heater. Definitely some more disassembling required. I'm definitely questioning how you get this off. Oh, okay, there we go. One diesel heater. Just need to unplug it from here. There we go. Right. So, unit without a diesel heater in it, which was also the main reason I took that up as a spare heater for the Arctic trip, was so if I needed to, I had a full diesel heater I could take out and put in where my current heater is if I needed to, opposed to just taking up a unit. It was versatile. If I wanted a portable one, which I did actually use, I could use it. So let's have a look at this. So markings wise, Hcalory diesel air car parking heater, HCA1, which I do believe you can actually go buy. This is a separate heater if you want, without it being in the box. 12-volt version, 5 kilowatt. If 5 kilowatt is a real thing is always a question, because this is based off the S-Bar diesel heater. When the patent expired, the Chinese diesel heaters used the expired patent and basically used cheaper parts and altered the design just so it could be manufactured cheaper. They're 4 kilowatt heaters, so it's never actually really been seen if it is 5 kilowatt or it's just they've just tuned it higher. Same as most heaters. Unscrew the end cap. That means you can take off the top plate and have a look inside. First off, that is a lot smaller than I was expecting and than I've seen on most of my other heaters, and it's actually really well marked. Usually, or when I'm disassembling these heaters, I've got to photograph what I'm doing so I can remember, because these plugs, some of them use the same plug and sockets but don't really label them. This has done it for you. Glow plug, fan, temperature sensor, 12 volt, 5 kilowatt. I'm guessing that's 22, and because that's the dosing of the pump. So far, looks nice. Right, let me just get some of my other units so I can do a comparison. Right, I've just gone in and grabbed some of my other diesel heaters. So these are all 12 volt, 5 kilowatt diesel heaters, which are based off the same design as this one, but there's going to be a variety of different components. Generic 12 volt, 5 kilowatt, I can't remember the name of. This is a American, made in China, diesel and petrol valet diesel heater. Uses the same design but a proprietary burner. And this is the 5 kilowatt diesel heater made by another company, and it's just got a different plastic case. But it's got quite a few examples of the different components, so we can compare them a little bit to this. Get them opened up. Right, more or less same configuration. So this one in the back corner, this is the generic looking ECU you see on a lot of them. This one, from the American made one, this is more based off what's actually in the original S-bar heater and uses waterproof sockets. And this is the first time I saw this type of ECU when I disassembled this one. So very similar layout. This ECU is considerably smaller than the rest. So let's get it out of the actual case, peel off the bottom gasket. Alright, one of the pads fell out, which is pretty normal because these always fall out. And that just stops hot, potentially quite hot, casting, hitting the plastic shell. Casting quality, pretty good. Only a little bit of the flashes not cleaned off, but that's not really going to affect the quality. One of those had loads of it on where some of the fins were entirely blocked. Feels lightweight. There is some aspects on these where I can never tell if it's a damage to the original casting or not, where these fins here are bent, and there's a gap there, but they're not actually loose from the casting, so I think the original mould is missing a gap, or it's bent. Yeah, it's a bit rough, but it's all right. So let's get the ECU off and start taking it apart a little bit more. Temperature sensor. Close up of the ECU. I mean, whilst those look a little bit fragile where people pulled on the cable hard enough, because it is only this rubber gland which holds it in place, so you don't want to pull too hard. A lot smaller than the others. Let's just pry it off as well. Back of it, if anybody knows what they're looking at, feel free to freeze it and have a look there. And for people new to it, this is the Hall effect sensor. So that job is to figure out motor speed. And it does that by, when this spins by the motor, that magnet there goes past the sensor, therefore it knows the RPM. The board needs to be there because the Hall effect sensor is mounted there. This is still a brushed motor, and not an inductive or brushless motor like the auto terms. I don't know if any of the Chinese ones yet are going for brushless motors. Interesting though, there is a sticker over some of the motor information. 12 volt, 2023, August 10th, which is probably when it was made, and I did get this heater last winter. Let's take off that bit of black tape and see what's underneath there. It was just, I presume, Chinese characters. Not sure why they wanted to cover that up, unless they wanted to try and separate from the idea that it's a Chinese product, so they don't want Chinese writing to be visible on it. Let's take a photograph and see what that says. Well, only information I can get from that, as you've just seen, is that name, which I think is just the manufacturer of the motor. Not entirely sure why they wanted to cover that up. Anyway, let's get it disassembled some more. Right, well, there's the motor section. If you are disassembling these further, this gap here between the metal housing and the fan is an important bit if you are reassembling it. So, broken chunk there, that is balancing. So this is balance, which is nice. You see this on a lot, especially from the Chinese ones, that they just snap off a chunk or multiple chunks in different places. So at least it's done some balancing, opposed to just quality control. Next bit, inside, burn chamber, glow plug, fuel supply. I'm going to go find my glow plug tool so I can get this glow plug out, and then we'll take that off to see if the burn chamber is any different than normal. Gasket wise, I'm going to do my best to remove this gasket without breaking it, because I don't have any spares. Well, I can't actually find my glow plug removal tool, but since I've got the unit in half, I can just use a spanner to loosen it off and do it by hand. So, glow plug, if you've not seen them before, this is pretty much the same on all of these units as well. And down in there, you've got the atomizer. So when diesel is pushed through the pump and dosed onto the atomizer, it then allows at the beginning the glow plug to ignite it, and then when it's going ready, it allows it to be ignited by the heat already in there, because the glow plug turns off again. So let's get those bolts undone and have a look. Burner, pretty standard, similar to all the others I've seen. And then in the main housing, your gasket, and pretty similar. Quite thin fins. Some of the different models do have thicker fins internally. And that's about it. So as far as diesel heaters go, pretty standard, almost identical to them. The only difference physically from the main components I can see is the ECU. The rest of the parts for all of those should be able to mix and match if you wanted. Well, now that we've had it apart, let's get it all back together again. All right, before I put it back in the case, for anyone who is not familiar, the working principle of how these diesel heaters work, on the bottom you've got 2 ports, air intake, So that's your combustion air going into the chamber, and then fan spins combined with a fuel dosing amount, burns fuel, exhaust gases come out here. These two need to be external when you're mounting them in a vehicle because, well, exhaust gases out this one, and if there's an issue, exhaust gases can also leave out of this one if there's a problem. The way they actually heat, burn chamber is inside there. This gets hot, this fan spins, sucks air in one way, blows it across those fins, cooling the unit, blasting hot air out there on the other side. Really, a very basic, simple unit. Back in the case. Right, reassembled. Now it's time to get it back in the case. Right, well, there we go, eventually back on. Right, one heater, oh wait, reassembled. I think the next goal is going to be to set up the fuel tank and actually do some testing on it. There we go, it comes with the mounting hardware and a nipple. Right, well, if my fuel goes in there, it's going to be neater if I do it that way. Right, O-ring put on, hole drilled, and I'm just going to use my thermocouple to get it in there. There we go. Now, there we go. That is probably, that's got the O-ring on the back of it, so it's probably sealed enough, but it does come with a second O-ring. It does come with a nut in the end, which does have a depression in it, so I am just going to put the second O-ring on there on the outside. There we go. Right, fuel line installed, nice short run, no real kinks, nothing wrong with kinks though, in this context maybe, but get back on. Currently late at night, we'll pick this up in the morning and we'll actually test out the heater, the electrics and the app and all the other bits.
Well, before we can start testing a portable diesel heater, we need to power it. And this is where this video's partner comes in. Portable power with Ecoflow. So if you follow the channel, I do usually, when I'm doing reviews of diesel heaters, use a power station to power them. Main reason being, I can actually have a readout on the wattage. And for this one, Ecoflow have asked me to look at the new River 3. Now, I've worked with Ecoflow for quite a few years now, in the Arctic, and my current favourite Ecoflow power station, which is the small River 2, which I use as my drone charging station. This is the new River 3, which is meant to be substantially better.
This is my much loved River 2. It is the smallest and more portable of the River line. And this is a considerably smaller River 3. And just for reference, due to time restraints, mine was shipped with a European socket, so I'm just using an adapter. It's a great entry-level power station, as it's one of their cheapest around. So this is a 245 watt-hour power station. Inverter-wise, it's 300 watt output normally, and with their X boost mode, which means you can use some dumber, higher wattage appliances up to 600 watt. All your usual charging options. On the side, you've got access to the fast charging via AC, which allows you to charge the unit from completely flat to 100% in less than an hour. A built-in MPPT for the solar panels, such as the new Ecoflow 45 watt solar panel, or the 12 volt socket charger, like you see on your vehicle's dashboard. It's got a 10 amp socket. In this case, isn't going to be enough to run the diesel heater, so I will be using an inverter and a power supply, 2 USB-A and 100 watt USB-C. Now, one of the new main talking points of the River 3 line is it uses GaN. It's basically a different semiconductor material. What that means in layman's terms is it's more efficient. A way to sort of visualize what that means is if you ran the same appliance off both of these units for the same amount of time, the River 3 would use less energy to run the same unit over the same duration because the way it's doing it is more efficient than this. So there we go, Ecoflow River 3, new small power station, and well, if you want to find out more about it, check out the links in the description, and I'm going to be using it for the rest of the video anyway because I need to power the portable diesel heater, so let's get on with that. Right, time for some actual testing. So I've got my exhaust set up, I've put a heat shield on it and it's currently pointing out the window directly. I'm not going to bother putting the air filter one on the front just because it's going to make it a little bit messier and harder for filming. Still need to feel it up, and as we've just seen, I'm using power station to run it. This will take 140, 50 watts maybe on startup for the glow plug, plenty enough for that. Although I can't use the 12 volt socket because 12 volt sockets on most power stations generally are not powerful enough. So I'm going to be using a 30 amp AC to DC charger. So it's going to be using the inverter, which is a higher output, into the charger, and then converting it back down to 12 volt, which is not efficient, but it works for what I want to see here. Power cable. So whilst the wires of this actually look pretty thick, spec-wise, cable, it says 16 American wire gauge, which is 1.31 millimeters squared, which is actually quite thin. So we're going to cut the ends off. Oh yeah, Whilst the cable actually looks thick, it's mostly just sheath. The actual core is quite small. Plug the power station in. Right, time to fill it up. So people might have seen this before. This is from Arctic trip round 3 on the day where the engine wouldn't start because the diesel froze. This was my example bottle of what UK diesel did in the extreme cold, where it turned basically into goo or gel. So this is 2 litres. Let's put most of 2 litres in. I'll try not to get some of the contamination in there. Please don't spill on my worktop. Perfect. And I think I just managed to leave the contaminants in the bottle. Appears to be no leaking at all. So main points that I want to look front of the heater, bit makes diesel heaters different as usually the ECU, and having different ECUs is different controllers, and some of those have different uses. So this one apparently has altitude adjustment. It's got an app, and I want to see if the app is more of a gimmick or if it's actually a useful functional app. Timers, and the most important one for most people is the thermostat. How does the thermostat work, and does it work well? Not many units get to the target temperature and then turn off. Apparently this one can do that, and even rarer is it to get up to the target temperature and then dial back to a lower setting, which it does to maintain your target temperature opposed to ramping up and down. Although one of the flaws I can see with this is a portable diesel heater, and it shouldn't be, as we've already said, mounted in a vehicle context. It should be outside, like in a tent pumping hot air room, and I imagine the temperature sensor is based in the controller, so if that's outside, that's never going to know the room temperature, so really the power modes are going to be the ones which are actually going to be used. But let's figure out and have a go. Right, let's just turn it on.
Start heating.
Oh, it speaks. So, glow plug is on, and it's currently doing 128 watts. So this will probably get a failed start first time round, just because it's going to have to still pump through a lot more diesel. So it's going to reboot and have another go. Okay, I can hear a bit of a combustion noise starting. And I can start to feel some heat coming out of it as well. Right, it's running. Right, ramped it up to maximum, pretty easy to adjust. Currently on a fixed mode, and if you want to drop it down to settings, you just scroll back.
Pressing the centre button changes it from fixed output mode to thermostatic mode.
That seems to be the temperature you want. Right, well let's turn it off and figure out what you do. Turning off as usual, the glow plug comes back on again for a little while, and then the fan will run just to cool the rest of the unit down. Right, next option, let's have a quick go at the app. So I downloaded the app, which is Air Heated BLE. Scan devices. Heater showed up, connecting to device. Well, that's some good information. So, heater connected. Let's see what we can do. Settings, language, password.
Thanks for using. I wish you a safe journey.
Okay, thank you. So it doesn't seem you can do much until you turn it on, so let's go for hold and to start.
Start heating.
Right. Automatic level load, running self-test. I'm going to presume manual gear mode is setting the power level when it's fixed. With automatic level mode, I'm going to assume is your thermostat.
So first feature which you don't see often, which I want to test, is the ability for the unit to turn off after you reach set target temperature. And I did have to turn this on in settings originally, so there's a bit of faff to get there. After it's turned on, when it reaches its target temperature, it should wait 30 seconds and then turn itself off.
Right, I'm going to redirect some of the warm air towards that, which I believe the temperature sensor's in, to just try and make it a bit quicker.
Start heating.
There we go. After reaching above its set target point, it turned itself off. Right, test 2. It now, when it drops down to 28 degrees, it should turn itself back on automatically. Right, just hit 28, so hopefully if we give it another 30 seconds or less, it should start to turn back. Oh, there we go. And it's turned back on automatically. Right, let's turn off automatic on-off, and I want to see how the thermostat reacts. Right, it's got to 29 degrees and it dialed back from 2 to 1, which was on minimum. Because what I want to do is open all the doors and hopefully get the temperature to start to drop. And if we can do that, then we might see it start to ramp up slightly. I want to know if it's going to ramp up all the way to maximum or if it's going to figure out somewhere in the middle. It's dropped down to 28 and it's gone up 2 bars.
So I'm using a fan to cool the temperature sensor down a little bit more than normal. Generally you see as the temperature starts to slightly drop, the power output starts to incrementally increase, opposed to just going to maximum.
Now that isn't common in the Chinese diesel heaters. Usually they just ramp between minimum and maximum. It actually looks like it's got quite a good working thermostat, which, because it's in the format of portable diesel heater, is basically useless because this would be outside with the temperature sensor. If you did want to make it work though, you could remove that and by some sort of extension cable, move that bit indoors. So then that temperature was more accurate to what you wanted inside the building. There's also a temperature compensation button, which means if you have this based on the floor versus at the top of a room, the temperature's different. You can offset that if you wanted. So actually, pretty good heater. If you wanted to install it permanently in a van, if you took it out of that and then sort of turret mount, actually that'd be quite a good thermostat. The app itself, I don't see loads of potential use for it because it's a portable heater. You're gonna have to be near it to turn it on, and it is Bluetooth. Right, next option. This button here, hold it for 7 seconds and it fills up the fuel tank in settings you can set in between 5 and 50 litres. I've got the 5 litre tank. However, it will only go to full. You can't set it to 2 litres like I put it in. Apparently it will measure how much fuel you've got left by counting the amount of pump strokes going out, which makes sense. Each pump is a fixed volume, so it should be able to count it and log how much fuel you use. Although I don't necessarily see looking at that tiny icon to figure out how much fuel you've got left is particularly useful when you can just look at the transparent fuel tank a few inches away and actually see how much fuel you've got. Now, it would be useful if you could view that remotely, but you can't.
Although if permanently installed and the controller isn't near the fuel tank, then it actually would be quite useful. Right, next thing I want to see is what it looks like inside thermally. Quite a tight box. How does it perform? So let's get the thermal camera out. So even with the insulation on, it's still 100 degrees.
Now there is actually quite a bit of smoke coming from here, but I don't know if it's just because it's kind of the first time it's being used or what.
Next question would be fuel. How much fuel does it use? Which is a common question, but not too easy to answer. This is a 5 litre container, and the way I'm going to do it, this is currently running maxed out. So if I put my microphone on the pump, I can then look at the wave format in the editor to see how many doses there is, and then work out that over a course of seconds. And I know the fixed amount of a dose, so we can work out how long, at maximum, 5 litres of fuel would last. So it's now on low, and we'll let that settle, and then we'll again see what the pump speed was. So how this actually works in practice: take the length of the clip, which is 7.08, count the number of clicks, which was 45, put it into ChatGPT, does the math, and that gave me a hertz 6.35. Then the same again for low, which was 13 clicks for 6.1 seconds, and that gave me a hertz of 2.13. Interesting, though, normally for a 5 kilowatt heater, the low end by default is about 1.4 without tuning, and the high end is about 5 points. So that's higher than normal, and that's definitely higher than normal. It's looking on the Hcalory website. They actually also call it a 8 kilowatt diesel heater, which don't exist in this form factor. So it might be a 5 kilowatt diesel heater, which is based off the 4 kilowatt design, running a higher tune. And here are the results. So if it was running on its maximum mode, it would be using about half a litre in an hour, give you, in that 5 litre tank, give you just about 10 hours runtime. And on its low setting, it'd be using about 170 millilitres an hour, which would give you about 30 hours runtime on the 5 litre. But for unnecessarily diving deeper, listed usage is 0.04 to 0.11 gallons per hour, which equals about 150 millilitres per hour on low, and on high would use about 410 millilitres per hour. However, with some more unnecessary maths,
which means its low setting is about 1.9 hertz, which is a little bit under what I got.
Their high usage only works out to be about 5.2. which 5.2, 5.4 is the normal output of a 5 kilowatt diesel heater. However, the website says it's an 8 kilowatt diesel heater. The diesel heater itself says it's a 5 kilowatt diesel heater, but the actual hertz we're getting is about 6.35, 6.4. So it seems it's a 5 kilowatt diesel heater, which is running a higher tune for 8 kilowatt output.
So I did also work out the energy consumption electrically. So on low, it was about 11.5 watts, or about 0.9 amp, and on high it was about 43 watt to 3.4 amp. But there was some fluctuation in that, and in total that would work out to running on high about 3.4 amp hour on your 12 volt battery per hour, and about just under an amp hour on low per hour.
One thought is the toolbox itself is quite a nice form factor. It starts to lose its appeal of when you add the exhaust and the air intake and the filter, and you add a big fuel tank to the back. It sort of loses that nice all-in-one toolbox appeal, because it's a all-in-one with a bunch of extra bits on the outside. Well, conclusion time. As far as diesel heaters go, from a use case point, it's actually better than most. As a portable heater, I like the toolbox idea, but I think overall it's a pretty good heater. And it seems like Hcalory's traditional heaters, so your normal non-portable ones, with a controller like that, could be a great option for a van if you're on a budget. And I'm sure there's quite a few extra settings which I haven't gone into on the controller. But if you want to find out more about that heater, do look in the links in the description, and they are pretty reasonably priced if you go to banggoods.com, who are the ones who have provided this heater for this video. If you do like this sort of diesel heater content, do consider subscribing to the channel, and you can find some of my other videos or where I use them in the Arctic. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.